how little, how not so far that I've gotten. I've literally just in the first few days of being with Srila Prabhupada, and it's already like my 4th day here, so we'll start with Panchakopa Tarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pajani Nir Vishesha Sanyavari Pasakaja Desatarani. I found something just minutes ago. I thought I would read it. It's very nice. Something Srila Prabhupada said in a letter, 1973. Prabhupada says, "You have written so many nice things in praise of me, but I think that my Guru Maharaj is great. I'm not great. He is great. Sometimes by association of the great one appears, sometimes by association of the great one appears great. Just like the sun is great, heat and light, and by reflecting the greatness of the sun's light, the moon is dead of night, also appears great. But actually the moon is by nature dark and cold, but in association with the sun, it has become accepted as great. This is the real position. So I thank you very much that you are appreciating my Guru Maharaj, who wanted to preach Krishna consciousness all over the world. He is so great." Yeah. So that's by associating with the great, sometimes we can appear, but it's only, for us, it's just Srila Prabhupada is great. And somehow or other, if we just associate with him, give Srila Prabhupada to others, we can appear as great, just like the moon. Of course, Prabhupada speaks very differently about the moon here, to use as analogy. Other times he would say, moon very cooling. The moon is very cooling, and of course, heavenly planet. So yesterday, where were we? We were in Los Angeles yesterday, and that was just 1972. And there are many, many things I can speak about Los Angeles, but that was through 4 or 5 different times in Los Angeles. So now, since Prabhupada was headed to Vrindavan for Kartik, as I said, this will be his first Kartik in Vrindavan at Radha Damodar Temple since he left back in 1965. And he was very excited to be there. And I told you on the plane, he told me, "You'll read from Nectar of Devotion," he said to me, "and I'll stop and make commentary." Of course, when we arrived there, Pradyumna was the speaker. His voice you will hear saying the Sanskrit slokas every class with Srila Prabhupada. So that was Pradyumna, so we also did it there. I had my little services. I recorded all of those classes. Also, it wasn't easy to be in India. We had that Ur tape recorder I described, and then big reels of tape. I think there were 2 companies, TDK and maybe BASF, were the 2 companies that made reels of tape that you would record. Now, they were available in USA and in Europe, but in India, you couldn't even get them. So when we went from USA to India, they gave me 3, 4 blank tapes to record all of Prabhupada's classes. And I was shown in using the tape recorder, of course, it has different speeds. And the faster speed, the better the quality of the recording. But after I recorded 1 class, 2 class, 3 classes, I could see we're not going to have any more tapes. So I turned the tape recorder down, the speed, all the way down to the slowest one, which sometimes when you hear these classes, you can hear the lack of quality in the classes. But that's what we had to do just to get them recorded. So that's the little things behind the scenes that are going on traveling with Srila Prabhupada. So we're going to move on a little bit from Los Angeles, and we'll get back to Los Angeles in a few days, hopefully. So from Los Angeles, Prabhupada went to Hawaii. This was, of course, for me, everywhere I went was the first time I was there. And now I have my passport. And our services with Srila Prabhupada, we had very distinct services, and they didn't overlap, which was the way things were in ISKCON back then. Listening today to our class, the presentation you gave, I was remembering way back in the early 70s, Rupanuga, he used to push. He said, devotee must work according to his psychophysical nature. And that was something would have been a very good idea to institute at that time, because it meant according to your psychology and according to your abilities, your physical nature, according to what you could do as a man or a woman, but also understanding the psychology of each person. So I remember so many times when we would meet, he would always speak about that, the psychophysical nature, working according to our qualities and our physical nature. So now we're in Hawaii. This was my very first time there. And again, I'm new servant. And I remember one lunchtime giving Srila Prabhupada his lunch. Oh no, I skipped something. See, even from Los Angeles, we went to San Francisco. That's what we did. Prabhupada spent 2 days in San Francisco. And he stayed in one hippie house. He was a devotional person, but he was a hippie. And the devotees, he was very fortunate. They cleaned his house. I'm sure it must have been in bad shape, but they spent days and days trying to make the house very nice for Srila Prabhupada's arrival. And they did. This is 72, not 67, 68, 69, 1972. And Prabhupada arrived there, and there was about a half a dozen devotees that were at the house. And I remember Prabhupada came in, it was just a cottage, not so big. And Prabhupada came in and he sat down on a chair much like this. And he's sitting there, and the devotees, they're just kind of looking at him, wondering what's next. And finally Prabhupada said, in Vedic society, whenever you receive a guest, you should wash his feet. We had to tell them even what to do this time. He had to tell us what to do. He said, this is just the custom. And he said it in a way, not even spiritual master, any guest comes. He said, you should wash their feet. So then, of course, they ran into the kitchen and just grabbed a stainless steel bowl and a pitcher. And then Prabhupada said, is there any prasadam to distribute? And there was no prasadam to distribute. Again, that was another strike two, no prasadam. I learned with Prabhupada, no one left his room without getting prasadam. So important. Prasadam is so important. So then he cut up an apple. Had us cut up an apple or two so that everybody got a little prasadam. I remember in Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram Mandir, how hot we were there in the summertime when the temple was supposed to be opened, 1974, Janmashtami, and of course it wasn't anywhere near ready. And we were out and Prabhupada came back and had me follow him. He went to the bathroom and he washed his feet. He said, if you just wash your feet, he said, immediately your whole body is relieved. He said, after you come out, you come in, and he said, you just wash the feet. Whole body is relieved. So he spoke 2 nights there. And I had never met Jayananda at that time. He was always busy serving. This discussion today, you have to find your service. Jayananda had no problem finding his service. He would do what no one else wanted to do. the dumpster, he was in charge of the trash, the dumpster, do the shopping at the produce wholesale markets in the morning. Everyone loved Jayananda. Everyone loved him. So Prabhupada spoke the first night. And after the lecture, he was on a platform like this, again on the little Vyasasan. And after the lecture, all the devotees came up. And Prabhupada's sitting there and he said, "Where's Jayananda?" And someone said, "Oh, Prabhupada, he's in the kitchen. He was cooking popcorn for Sankirtan, for Harinam Sankirtan to distribute. They distributed bags of popcorn." So Prabhupada got up out of his Vyasasan, went into the kitchen to see Jayananda. Everyone wanted to see Prabhupada. Prabhupada wanted to see Jayananda because he was doing his service. Like we know Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada quoted many times, don't try to see Krishna, but work in such a way that Krishna wants to see you. And that's what I saw there. Prabhupada went to see Jayananda. And it was just for a few moments, just to see him. How are you? Fine, Srila Prabhupada. Just doing his service. That was Jayananda. So then Prabhupada, we went back in the car. And Prabhupada was sitting in the front seat. I was in the back. The driver was there. So they took him past the Harinam party, the chanting party. So Prabhupada, very slowly, they went by the Sankirtan party, and Prabhupada saw all the devotees chanting in the street. Of course, he was very happy seeing everyone. He's smiling at the devotees. So the car stopped, and one devotee gave Prabhupada a bag of popcorn. So Prabhupada had the bag in his hand, and on the way home, Prabhupada was eating the popcorn. He just ate the popcorn for the rest of the trip on the way home. So the second night there was another lecture. Again, we went past the Harinam party, and the devotee came to the window, Srila Prabhupada's window, with the popcorn. He said, no. He said, it's very nice. He said, very, very nice. He said, but I can't digest. I can't digest. So he refused the popcorn that night. Prabhupada liked puffed rice. We know muri, puffed rice and peanuts. He said puffed rice was innocent. In other words, you could eat a bag of puffed rice. It's not going to bother you. You'll have no problem digesting. He said it was innocent food. I never heard any food called innocent, but he said puffed rice was innocent, he said. And he would ask for it. One night, I said, many, many nights, I told you, Prabhupada, every night hot milk with a little sugar, every night, full cup like that. And many nights he would ask me to make something for him. So the one night he had puris, potato and eggplant. Potato and eggplant. He would ask for that sabji often in the evening, potato, eggplant. And I gave it to him. So the next evening he rang the bell and he said, tonight, he said, make me puffed rice. He said, last night, he said, I had the sabji, he said, and it was difficult for me to get up to do my translation work. So he adjusted his diet for his service. Now, was it difficult? I guess maybe he felt a little whatever. So he said, make puffed rice tonight. But then the next night, again, he could ask for puris and sabji. But for that particular night, he said, just make puffed rice. And then, like I said, there in San Francisco, they had kitchen. They set everything up. There was a wok. Fresh ghee was there. And again, now I'm just with Prabhupada now just for a week or so. And he says, you can make me puri and chips. I said, yes, Prabhupada. So I go to the kitchen and make the puri dough. I get potatoes and I peel them. And I start slicing them really, really thin. Like potato chips. Very, very, very thin. And I fry them. I had never made chips before. And I fry them and everything, and put a little salt on them, and I bring him in to Prabhupada, and he says, "What is this?" I said, "Potato chips, Prabhupada." He said, "They're not chips." Immediately my whole heart sunk. He said, "They're not chips." I said, "All right, never mind." And I went back, I made another puri. I came back in with the puri. He said, "They're very nice." Very good. He said, "It's okay." But he never asked me for chips again. 2.5 years, never asked for chips. I didn't know what I did wrong for decades until I went to England and I realized he wanted fries. He wanted French fries, what we call French fries here, or not here, but in America, French fries. Chips were chips. Chips are crisps, English crisps. So anyway, that was a lesson. He didn't say anything, and he ate them, and he had some more as well. But I felt bad. I never got to actually make them proper chips for Prabhupada, you know. Something, maybe next lifetime I can make them some proper chips. So that was San Francisco. Then we went to Hawaii, where he stayed just a few days. And this was my first chastisement. I gave him his lunch. So after lunch, I go and I collect the plate, and I'm in the kitchen, and I'm transferring everything off the plate, washing his plate, and devotee comes. The words you never want to hear. Prabhupada wants to see you. Generally, he's not wanting to see you to just say how nice everything is. If he wants to see you, it means something happened. And something happened that shouldn't have happened. But I didn't know that at the time. And I go in, I offer obeisances. He said, "You haven't cleaned the table after removing the plate." He said, "You're a Brahmin. Supposed to be a Brahmin." He said, "You don't know after clearing the plate?" He said, "You have to clean the area." Yes. So that was my first time. Then from there we went, Prabhupada stopped in Jakarta, Indonesia. And our senior godbrother, Burjan, was there. Prabhupada sent him to Asia, him and his wife, they went to Asia early on. And of course I didn't know either of them. He arranged programs. I think that's the videos you can see. It was at Jakarta, Indonesia, Prabhupada. Interesting Vyasa song behind him, and you'll see kirtans going on. And he was there for almost a week. And I'm massaging Prabhupada. So now I've been massaging Prabhupada for almost 2 weeks. So I have my rhythm, giving massage everything, and massage his head, sandalwood oil, which is cooling. Then you could get very nice sandalwood oil, Mysore sandalwood oil, in an aluminum bottle in various sizes, little bottle. You could even get a 500 ml bottle of sandalwood oil, and it was pretty much pure. When I smell sandalwood oil, I go right back 50 years, right back to just massaging Prabhupada. But I don't get to smell that fragrance very often. They smell proper sandalwood oil. But sense very much, just like music. You know, you can hear music and boom, bring you right back. Also fragrances like that. So I could smell sandalwood oil and such nice. So then I'm behind Prabhupada and I'm massaging his back. And Burjan is in front of him. Prabhupada, now remember, he's going to Vrindavan. He's very aware of what he's done, where he's going, what he's going to be doing, who's going to be there. And he's sitting there as I'm rubbing his back, and he looks at Burjan. He said, "We're successful because I allowed women in the temple." He said, "Previously women were never in the temple," he said. "And my godbrothers, they criticize me for allowing women in the temple." He said, but I studied the American people. He said, I studied for a year. He said, and I could understand, if we're to spread Lord Chaitanya's movement all over the world, women have to be involved as well as men. He said, they're always together in the West. Men and women are together. He said, so I did that and we're successful. Then he said, but my godbrothers criticize. He said, but you go to Mayapur for festival days. He said, who's in the temple? Nothing but widows. He said, filled with widows. He said, but they criticize me. He said, but by making that adjustment, he said, we've been successful. Now I'm behind him and I'm just massaging. You never stop your service. So all these things you'll hear when I'm with Prabhupada and he's saying things, I'm doing something. I'm not sitting there. He talks to me when I'm doing service. So now I'm thinking, and I don't know, somehow, I guess it must have been Super Soul. I asked Prabhupada my first question, and it was probably the best question I ever asked. So finally, after a minute or two, I said, Prabhupada, what's the difference between making an adjustment and changing a principle? And then it got quiet. A little time went by, and he said, that requires a little intelligence. He said, that requires a little intelligence. But imagine, Prabhupada understood, like he said, by studying. He didn't say, I just came to America, and he said, I studied the people. He said, and he made that adjustment. And he said that, I made an adjustment. You heard the last adjustment was the loto, right, with the sweet rice in it. That was a little adjustment. This was big adjustment. But still, it was an adjustment. Well, he didn't change any principles. He made an adjustment. We see here, it was last week, we had a little, they had a little Vyas Puja ceremony for Radhanath Maharaj. And one of the devotees was talking about the hospital, when he opened up the hospital, Bhaktivedanta Hospital. And I remember that, of course. So many quotes would go up there. Prabhupada said, we don't open hospitals, we don't do this, we just give Krishna. But you see, this hospital is not a hospital, it's a temple. Radhanath Maharaj made an adjustment, an amazing adjustment. All you people, so many are here, I ask I'm here for treatment, I'm here for treatment. They're all going to the hospital for treatment. But look at the environment, we're all in a temple. You go to Bhaktivedanta Hospital, you go in, you offer obeisances to Srila Prabhupada. Jamuna spent most of her final days there. So many I know going there, this surgery, that surgery. I had 5 years ago, I went there for a little surgery 5 years ago. What better place to do it? So one has to have a little intelligence to understand what is adjustable and what isn't. Yesterday we talked about in Los Angeles, Shalavati. She thought she was making an adjustment in the deity worship. No. That was not an adjustment. And Prabhupada immediately squashed it. No, he said, I've shown you exactly what to do. He said, you don't change anything. So that was at that time there. I think I already told you how I spoiled when Prabhupada asked for the hot milk, right? I went down to the kitchen. Yeah. Sudama Vipra accomplished it. You wouldn't say no to Sudama Vipra. I was easy to say no, get out of the kitchen, but I'm sure when he went down there, they just looked at him with his tattoos on his arms and, all right, you want hot milk? I'll give you hot milk. So finally, Prabhupada's going to get to Vrindavan. October 15th was the first day of Kartik in Vrindavan. And again, I remember arriving at Radha Damodar temple. In the deity, Radha Damodar, the deity doors were closed. And Prabhupada came in, and whoever was there was a little fanfare. Prabhupada came up, they opened the doors, he offered obeisances, saw Radha Damodar. Then they closed the doors. Then they opened the doors again. And they had the Govardhan Shila, I believe the footprint of Giriraj there, Prabhupada offered obeisances. And he told me, he said, you circumambulate here 3 times, he said, just like going around Govardhan. What a blessing. Going around Govardhan, not such an easy thing, going around Govardhan, but he made it so easy. And then I got to see Prabhupada's sitting room and the kitchen, never saw before. I got to meet Jamuna, and she's in the kitchen, cooking. From the morning, from early morning, she's making different preparations for Srila Prabhupada's lunch. And this was the first time I didn't have to cook for Srila Prabhupada's lunch. All of a sudden, as I said, I'm cooking and massaging going on at the same time, which was a bit of anxiety for me. Every day it was anxiety. I said at one class, I said, Prabhupada's cooker was my best friend, because without that, I could have never managed cooking. At Krishna Balaram Mandir, Prabhupada said in front of a group of devotees, an Indian guest and all, and he's talking about how we have to minimize our activities, our necessities, our material activities, our eating and sleeping, everything minimized, he said. Then he said, just like Sruta Kirti, he said, he cooks my whole lunch, 45 minutes. Isn't that right, Sruta Kirti? I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said, and you get massage at the same time? He said, yes, massage and cooking, 45 minutes, finished. He said. So the first day, preparing everything to make his lunch, that took time. The cooker did all the work, but you had a person had to fill up the cooker. So that was something that kept me busy. But now, I'm just sitting on that veranda between the kitchen and Prabhupada's sitting room, where he took rest. I'm just sitting there and chanting, but I can see through the door. There was a screen door. It was darkish because of the screen, but I could see Jamuna sitting on the floor, you know, and she was a little bit, you know. But as soon as I saw her, I always thought Jamuna, I just thought Mother Jasoda. To me, it was like being around Mother Jasoda. Just wanted to take care of Prabhupada expertly. The most expert person I ever met was Jamuna, without a doubt. The detail, the attention to everything she did was at such a level that I had never seen. Then I'm watching as I'm sitting there, I'm seeing her, and everything, she's just sitting on the floor. There's no gas stove, and not even electric stove. There's a bucket, and in the bucket were just coals. That's what she cooked on. And she's got a bucket of water beside her. That was the water source. A bucket of water, a bucket stove, and she's preparing these different preparations. So then finally I give Prabhupada massage, puts on his tilak, dresses, puts tilak on, says his Noon Gayatri mantra. Every day Prabhupada applied his tilak, at least twice a day, said his 3 Gayatris, chanted his rounds every day. Our founder Acharya, he did all of these things every day. You've learned that's what Acharya means, by example. He was very happily doing it every day. So he finished his Gayatri, and then he walks across the veranda. I offer obeisances, and he goes in the kitchen. I haven't seen this room. I knew about this room because it had, you've seen the photos, Prabhupada looking through the window where he could see Rupa Goswami's Bhajan Kutir and Samadhi. So after about 10 minutes, I decide to look inside. So I open up the screen door and I just look in, and I see Prabhupada in his sitting place, honoring prasadam. He's on a very little asana, and he's got choki table in front of him. His thalis there, katoris are there, everything just expert. And I poked my head in out of curiosity. And I look in and Prabhupada sees me. He says, "Have you taken prasadam?" I said, "No." He said, "Come sit down." At Radha Damodar temple, as he's looking, Rupa Goswami Samadhi, and I'm taking, and I finally understood what prasadam was, what really nice prasadam was. So as I said, they were eating 10, 15 minutes. She's giving Prabhupada chapati, looking, "You want chapati?" Giving me another chapati. She's running back and forth. Now she's serving both of us. Prabhupada quiet. I told you, doesn't speak during prasadam. Just take prasadam. And then we're both finished. Prabhupada said, "So you like the prasadam?" I said, "Yes, Prabhupada, very much." He said, "So tomorrow you cook for her." And then he let me go. Of course, she wouldn't let me cook for her. She wouldn't want me to cook for her. It would have been nothing like she cooked for Prabhupada. But the principle was there. See, that's the principle. The principle. Prabhupada would say, we call each other Prabhu. Back in those days, we called one another Prabhu. Man, woman, didn't matter. Everybody was Prabhu. So you call me Prabhu, I call you Prabhu. So what's the question of someone being above someone else? Prabhupada said we call each other Prabhu. So he told me, imagine she was a married woman. Prabhupada said you cook for her. This is what we understood it in Krishna consciousness at that time. Didn't matter. One was a brahmachari, one was a sannyasi, one was a grahasta. Prabhupada just had us, everyone serves under any capacity. When I was with Prabhupada, in the beginning, I was brahmachari. Shyama Sundar was married with a child. Pradyumna was married with a child, traveling with Srila Prabhupada. It wasn't a question, he only traveled with brahmacharis or something. No, anyone can do service. Huh? It didn't matter this man, that man, just do your service. As we go along in the next few days, you'll see how much. And I understood at that time especially, it was emergency situation. Things are very different now. But at that time, Prabhupada utilized everyone in any capacity. We know one devotee, he would write Prabhupada sometimes, he was married, and Prabhupada said he wanted to take sannyas. And Prabhupada responded, no. He said, you're better than sannyas. You have a beautiful wife. You're celibate with a beautiful wife. He said, you're more than sannyasi. He said, don't worry, just stay. He never made him sannyas the whole time. He said that in 72. Prabhupada left, he was still a grahasta. Never changed it on him. Because he had a wife that was doing very nice service. So, at that time, there was no facility, there's no temple, no Krishna Balaram Mandir, and it was a big festival. Like 40 devotees were there. This was a big festival in Vrindavan. And of course, every day Prabhupada was speaking nectar of devotion in the afternoon. Devotees are staying in Fogel Ashram and Keshigat Palace. And don't let the name fool you. It was no longer a palace. It wasn't like they stayed in a beautiful place. No, it was very austere. And you never saw the devotees throughout the day. They were busy trying to be clean, trying to have prasadam, trying to wash their clothes, trying not to be sick, which we were, at that time we all thought, pretty much all of us thought we were transcendental. So we would drink anything. We didn't need mosquito nets. We're not this body. We had a very interesting concept of what it meant to be Krishna conscious. And of course, we were all getting dysentery and malaria and jaundice. These were regular features for us. But one day, one morning, there's this devotee. He's walking around the courtyard, Radha Damodar temple. And Prabhupada, from his sitting room, he saw him every now and then as he passed. He could see him chanting. He said, who's this devotee? I said, I don't know, Prabhupada. He said, call him. So I called him. He came in, offers obeisances, and Prabhupada said, what's your name? And he said, where are you coming from? And he said, oh, my godbrother and I, he said, we were in South India. We were preaching there. And Prabhupada could see he was an independent fellow. He wasn't connected, not like he came from Brooklyn Temple or Los Angeles Temple. He seemed to be a bit independent. And Prabhupada said, well, what are your plans? And he said, well, after this, after Kartik, Prabhupada, he said, we're going to go to Vietnam to preach. Now, most of you, Vietnam doesn't mean anything. That's like saying you were going to go to the eastern Ukraine to preach, or you're going to go to the West Bank to preach. It was a war zone. People are every day, they're dying. People are dying all over, being shot, killing others. And he said, we're going to go there to preach. And Prabhupada's eyes, he said, Acha, Vietnam? Yes, Prabhupada. Prabhupada looked at him. He said, well, perhaps you should take sannyas. This devotee was younger than me. At the time, I'm 20, 21. He was younger. And when Prabhupada said that to him, of course, at that time, in those days, that was, if you were a brahmachari, which as soon as you joined the temple, you were a brahmachari. You didn't have a waiting period. You put your saffron on and you were a brahmachari, or a brahmacharini, if you were a young lady. So everyone wanted to be sannyas. So his eyes, he started thinking right away, and Prabhupada could see a little confusion in things. And he said to him, well, he said, you go in front of the samadhi of Rupa Goswami. He said, you chant there, and you ask him for blessings and advice. He said, and come back. And he did that every day. He said that you go chant in front of Krishnadas Kaviraja's samadhi. He said, you chant there. So finally, after a few days, he came and he said, so? And of course, yes, Prabhupada, sannyas, good idea. He said, okay, you tell Shyama Sundar, his secretary. Prabhupada said, you tell Shyama Sundar, bring you to Loi Bazaar, get your cloth, get your bamboo sticks, everything to make your danda. He said, and you'll be on the list. Prabhupada, part of what he was doing, he's on Balaram Rasa Yatra, at the end of Kartik, Prabhupada did a jagya. And he gave first initiation, he gave Brahman initiation, and he made sannyasis. So now, this devotee, he goes to Shyama Sundar, and he says, Prabhupada said, we're getting sannyas, me and my godbrother, you have to take us. And Shyama Sundar looked at this young kid. And Shyama Sundar now is 30 years old. So he was senior in every respect. Him and Prajumna, to me, they were from a whole different time. I was also just 21. So when you're 20, somebody's 30, it's a big jump. And they had been devotees for 6 years, which meant they were very much senior devotees. And he looked at him and said, Prabhupada didn't say anything to me. He said, you know, you're not on the list. No, Prabhupada said. So, of course, he asked Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, yes, they're taking sannyas. They're going to Vietnam. So then he went, they got everything, and in the meantime, others that were getting sannyas, they were upset. Who are these two getting sannyas? They don't even know any shlokas. There was one devotee they don't even know any shlokas. How Prabhupada giving sannyas? We've done so much to come to this platform. But Prabhupada said, and that night, of course, Prabhupada he wanted to show everyone in Vrindavan. One of his things, he was, as I said, he was meditating on it for months, going to Vrindavan. And this was him going to Vrindavan to show the little Bengali Swami who's been residing in Radha Damodar temple. He has devotees from all over the world. He's created Vaishnavas. And he would speak like that in his classes. He would talk about born a Brahmin, this idea, born in a Brahmin family. Like you said, they're bungis, but they're born in a Brahmin family. So Prabhupada was showing, no, this is not Lord Chaitanya. This is not our philosophy. This is not Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. And he wanted to show them. I mentioned that the other day. So that night, full moon night, in the courtyard there, Radha Damodar temple, Prajumna's doing fire yajna. Prabhupada initiates his Brahmins, sannyasis. I think 4 or 5 sannyasis were initiated at that time. Maybe Guru Kripa, Sodanandan, Rupanuga, and these 2 boys, Paramahamsa and Parabhajakacharya. That was their names. I have a picture here, Paramahamsa. Him and I, later on, he became Prabhupada's servant. And him and I, we were fast friends because our natures were very similar. Our psychophysical natures, we were quite similar. And yes, and like I said, he was even younger than me with Prabhupada. I have a beautiful picture here of Paramahamsa. Here he is. This was Paramahamsa Swami. You can see his picture there. And after the ceremony, Prabhupada told us, Rupa Goswami came. He said, and Narada Muni came. They came sometimes to Prabhupada's. We know he said that in San Francisco. And Jamuna writes that in her book when he said, did you see? Did you see Narada Muni? We didn't see anybody, but Prabhupada saw them attending these amazing universal functions that were going on the earth planet. Prabhupada creating this whole earth planet, making it Krishna conscious. And he said, oh yeah, they had come. So that was that time. They didn't go to Vietnam. They weren't allowed. They weren't giving visas for Vietnam at that time. But they did go to Iran. And Parabhajakacharya, he became a yoga teacher to the Shah of Iran's daughter. I think it was his daughter. So they had made some impact there at that time before everything changed a few years later in Iran. So that was Vrindavan. And I had a few experiences in Vrindavan. I said, if you know Prabhupada's room, you can see Prabhupada's room here, right here, just a few minute walk away. You go to Prabhupada's room and you'll see the little doors. They're just like this high. And you have to bend down to go into the room. And the wall's like this thick, concrete brick wall. Now I'm on the veranda, just 3-4 feet away from Prabhupada. They'd ring the bell. And the one time, of course I was never slow. Quickly I got up and I went into the room, but I lifted my head too quickly. And it slammed into the concrete wall, the roof of the doorway. It slammed into it. It was the first time I saw the Brahma Jyoti. And Prabhupada looked. Of course, I'm ashamed and embarrassed, and Prabhupada looks at me and goes, oh, like that. He said, this is to make you humble and learn how to be humble. Bow down. So every afternoon, the end of the afternoon, Prabhupada would do his Nectar of Devotion classes. And I have the tape recorder. That was my service, recording it. It wasn't easy. We had, the microphone. We used rubber bands to put the microphone on the wobbly mic stand. And so you had to watch everything all the time. And it was a nice